Hey map builders, it's Josh with Map Effects, and today I'm going to show you how to draw conifers or pine style trees on your fantasy maps. I'm going to just break it down into some real simple shapes and help you understand the fundamentals so that you can draw something like this on your map. So if you want to draw a conifer or a pine tree like this on your fantasy map, and you dive into just trying to draw it exactly like this, you might get a little overwhelmed with the details. So I find whenever I'm trying to learn how to draw something new, it's best to break it down into really basic shapes and then build up complexity as you go. So I'm just going to turn the opacity of this down, and we're going to kind of use this as our reference. I'm going to create a new layer. And what's the basic shape of a pine tree, right? It's a triangle. Ultimately, that's kind of the basic shape that we're dealing with here is a triangle, right? We'll turn this on so we can see a little bit better. But now that we kind of have our triangle shape, let's add another layer of complexity. So I'm just going to turn the opacity of this down so that we can, it's kind of our reference, our sketch, right? I'm going to create another layer above it. So let's kind of break this into sections now. So if we have a section here, and just close that off. We'll do another section. Close that off. And one more. Just something like that. So you can see that we've added another layer of detail, right? Another layer of complexity that's getting us closer to our final goal here. So let's duplicate this, and we'll just move it down here. And I'll turn the opacity of this down. So when we're drawing a landscape map, imagine that you're kind of flying over the landscape, looking down on the terrain at kind of a bit of an angle, and that's a classic isometric perspective like you'll see on most fantasy maps. So you'll notice that these lines are straight across here, but if you're looking down at the tree from above, this is actually going to be a little bit more... Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Hold on. Sorry about that. It's actually going to be more of a curve than straight across. And we can also bring this, have these lines kind of curve a little bit as if these branches are starting to kind of drape down. So we'll just curve this on both sides. Something like that. Do it one more time. Close that off. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're kind of sketching out a reference here, right? So now this is a little bit more complicated than, the triangle or what we had here. So now that we kind of have this as our main reference shape, this is when we can now kind of go back in and start adding some details like this. So I'm going to turn the opacity of this down. And we're going to look at this, and we're going to kind of use this sweeping motion to kind of go down the outside of the tree. Kind of bring it in a little bit, and we'll just keep going. And I'll come back up here. And do this side. And let's add a little bit more detail. Let's try this. Okay, so now we kind of have our basic shape. And now when we come across, imagine that these are all kind of draping out like this. So you kind of want the shape of your branches that you're adding to follow this kind of basic pattern or this basic shape. So when you're over here, you want the branches to be sweeping out in this direction. But if you're over here, you want them sweeping out this direction. And of course, if you're in the middle, it's going to be more straight on like that. So these are kind of your basic shapes that you're using as you draw in the details on this tree now. So we can kind of continue over here, have that sweep out a little bit more, and it's okay to add breaks in the lines. You don't necessarily want it to be completely solid. So then you can come back in. Let's add some detail here. Add a little bit more here. And then you can kind of come back into the middle and add some detail through here. And this is honestly probably too complex for what you would want to use on a map. I guess it would depend on the scale that you're using, but let's turn this up so you can see, and we'll move this guy over so you can see we've kind of mimicked the basic shape of this tree that we started out with here. And like I said, there's probably a little bit too much detail on this, and I can actually see that this line is off. It's kind of not going towards the center of the tree. It's kind of coming up and out, so that's why it looks like there's something wrong with the drawing, because I messed up. Here. There we go. That looks better. Okay, so again, you kind of have this center trunk here that all these branches are coming off on. So you have to remember that these branches should be connecting to this trunk in some way. So the thing that I just fixed was this branch was coming up here, so it didn't look like it was actually connected to the trunk, which is why it looked wrong. So we kind of have our basic idea on how to draw a tree. Now the question is, do you have to do this whole process for every single tree that you draw on your map? Well, let's look at that. So what if you want to add some trees like that around a mountain range like this? Do you have to sketch out each individual tree like we did in our example? No, that's really just a learning tool so you can understand the basic shapes, and once you kind of get practiced and get the hang of it, then you can just dive in and start drawing them straight on your map like this. So let's add some trees right here, and remember we're going to use that kind of sweeping motion out this direction. Just real basic. We can add in some more on the other side, and then it can meet in the middle. Remember, you can use broken lines. And we're going to continue to add a little bit of detail just following that curved shape. Something like that. And then if we want to, we can add more trees behind. Oh, let's undo that. Just add in some detail. And we could do one more over here. Let's do a smaller one, just like that. So they don't, it's best to not make them all the exact same height. There's a good variety that you should have in all the different trees. So you can just continue to build this up. You could either make this one large group, or you could do a scattering of trees all around these mountains like that. Or if you feel intimidated by the idea of having to draw all this out, that is why I created the new tree add-on pack for the Fantasy Map Builder, and one of the styles of trees that's included are conifers like this. So you can take the stamp brushes and just stamp wherever you want, move them around if you'd like, and you have the makings of a forest. So I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if you want to pick up the new tree add-on pack, it's available on the Map Effects shop, and I look forward to seeing your maps.